This week we get insight into Gabriel Dubreil's music in the folk and traditional scene and talk about entrepreneurship. Hi, thanks for checking out this week's musician interview. I have Gabriel Dubreil. He's come out to chat with us a little bit about what he's been up to in music in Vancouver and around the West Coast. He's a great fiddler. I've heard him play some tunes, and he really has an authentic sound and great personality. So I'm glad I could bring him out here today for you. So Gabriel, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you've been doing in music and maybe some projects you've been playing in?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm, as you said, I'm a Celtic violinist and a jazz violinist, and I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston and studied jazz performance. And I just moved back to Vancouver in May 2016. So that's just, 6 months ago, I guess.
Yes.
And I graduated from Berklee in 3 years. I just was very, very anxious to get out of there. I loved it, and I just couldn't wait to kind of move on and do my own thing. And so kind of being there, I had a lot of different opportunities. For the most part, I was working as a session musician. I was doing a lot of student films, a few independent films, and a lot of music videos for kind of emerging artists, and working with different producers and, playing everything from, some Spanish tracks that charted in Guatemala to, really good friends pop track or, modern jazz track. That was more just for fun. And then, I toured a little bit too with a few different bands from, kind of eclectic genres. I toured in the States with a group from India, and, a few shows here and there with some groups from a little all over the US. And then I moved back here and I started playing with my own trio, the Gabriel Dubreil Trio. And with that group, I basically play this mix of new trad, kind of Celtic music, and jazz. And I find it really cool to kind of try and bring two completely different traditions together and try to find some common ground. So what I've kind of done with that is jazz changes under Celtic music, which works a lot better than you might think. So
cool, man.
And that's basically what I've been up to since, teaching, doing session work, and performing with this trio.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot of things you've been up to, especially even like going straight into university. You're working like fully into that genre already and doing session work. That's kind of cool about Guatemala. I didn't actually know that. Cool, man. And so, you're spending so much time, not only playing music, but also meeting different projects and different ranges of people. Like, what really drives you behind your art and brings, so much energy to be able to do many projects? Like, what do you really love about that? What's the fire behind your art?
I think it's a bunch of different things. I think one thing that I'm really passionate about is, like I said, just bringing out like the old and the new traditions and, finding common ground between everyone, because it's a common culture, right? The Celtic and, Canadian traditional music culture is very common, and so is the American jazz traditions. And to try and bring that and create something new that hasn't been done before is really exciting, and that's in my own music. As far as, just playing every day, that's really what makes me happy. And I wouldn't want to do anything else. There's no reason that I wouldn't do that every day. And there's always a way to do it, whether that's teaching or, performing or doing session work. There's no shortage of work if you're good at what you do.
Cool. Yeah, man. Yeah. And I think that's really cool. Like, when you love something more than anything, there's not another option. So
exactly.
It doesn't really matter if you're making a ton of money or making a little bit, as long as you're surviving and, crushing it and doing your most favorite thing that you really have no choice but to do is really exciting. Cool, man.
And also, the more you do, the more you get. So it's
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, what does your art mean to you? Like, when you're able to bring together these different musicians and these different styles of music, traditional jazz and folk, And you were saying just before the interview, Gabriel was mentioning he was playing some different types of eclectic music. What was that one? An Asian type of music? It was from Bali or something.
Oh, Bollywood.
Bollywood. Okay,
Bollywood, Indian film music.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're playing Bollywood, and you were crossing it with something else.
That one was straight up.
Oh, that was straight up Bollywood
music. Yeah, like straight from a film, and we were touring with that project.
That's cool, man.
For 2-3 shows. But as far as what it means to me, it's I wouldn't say that there's anything behind it that's kind of superficial or anything. It's really, that's just what makes me happy. And really that I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. As far as what it means to me, it's, it's a bunch of friendships and just a bunch of relationships with different people. That you really, it's hard to find those kinds of relationships in other contexts because you get so close with people with which that you perform a lot or that you tour with or travel with. And so I think that that's really what it means to me is those relationships that you build with people. And, the relationships that you build with, promoters or producers too. Like those are all really interesting relationships where you have an interesting dynamic because you might not know them very well on a personal level, but you can tell a lot about a person, about the way that they play music. It's kind of like staring at someone straight into the eyes. And
True. Yeah. It's a very real thing. Yeah, I think that's part of the reason I was actually attracted to music, So I did very well in school academically, and music was the one thing that I found, I couldn't study for 5 minutes and do well at it. I had to spend the time, and it taught something about me.
And I think it always pays off. The time that you put in, it doesn't matter where you're at in your musical career. If you put in, X amount of hours of practice, you're going to get, this much better or, that much better. And, every little bit really counts, which is a really cool thing that you can't say for everything necessarily. The other cool thing is, you're never going to stop getting better and you're never going to be the best at what you do, which, can be demoralizing in a way, but can also be really motivating.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you hope your audience gets from your music? As an artist, you're able to, you mentioned a tiny bit, you're able to see a little bit of the musician expressing themselves and their personality and this sort of thing. What do you hope the audience gets from your music? Do you hope they get that same feeling or a different feeling or a multitude or?
Well, I think I'm trying to, through my music, I'm really trying to expose people to, like I said, to the old and the new. So to expose people to different traditions. And with the whole kind of new trad kind of music scene that's reemerging right now with young people, because the demographic is getting older and older with folk music. A lot of the shows that I play, you'll look out and for the most part it's, people our parents' age and older. And I think it's really cool to be able to expose people our age to that music because, and be able to revamp it and do it in a more modern way that is more attractive and that captures our ears a little bit more maybe than the straight up, Celtic or bluegrass music.
Exactly.
And so I think that's really what I'm hoping to get, that I'm hoping that the audience gets out of it is a new love or a discovery for new kinds of music that, otherwise maybe they wouldn't hear.
Cool, man. Yeah, that's awesome. So just sharing and bringing light to something that maybe they didn't hear before or and that they find special. Cool, man. And so, what do you get out of sharing your music with an audience and sharing that something special? You've been mentioning a little bit about how it's exactly what you feel, the only thing that you really want to do. And when you come home and you're able to do that one thing and play music each day, how do you feel?
I think, like I said, it's a relationship that you're building with the audience as well when you perform. And that's a big reason, a big part of the reason that I do it. And, also it's just a feeling of, it's really relaxing and I have a hard time finding playing music stressful. Even, when I'm doing the bookings and stuff, you're always looking ahead, which is really cool. Whereas you have so many other jobs that, that I've done too, where you're never really looking ahead more than tomorrow. Whereas this is something where you're probably booking for 6 months to a year from now, and you're always kind of, you know, your head is that much farther ahead of where you are right now, which I think is really cool.
Cool.
And yeah, it's just a feeling of happiness to be able to share my thought process and my evolution as a musician with the audience. That's
awesome. So yeah, like the prospect of, you know, ambitious new shows and connecting with people and happiness. Amazing.
And just always creating something new, you know, never necessarily sticking with the same project for too long. And, you know, maybe I have my core projects, but to always be able to do, you know, branch out and do something new.
Cool.
Is really cool.
Yeah. And like, with what attitude might you recommend up and coming musicians who maybe they want to go to Berklee, or they're just starting out in music, or just people who really love listening? What attitude might you recommend up and coming musicians or students might approach music? Something that maybe you've learned has helped you a ton in the past, or something you'd like to share?
I think the biggest thing is to always have an open mind and not to necessarily tie yourself down to one style and say, this is what I want to do, because it's very difficult to do nothing but that one style. You always have to be able to diversify. In, you know, music school as well as in business school, they always talk about, you know, multiple income streams and all this stuff. But it's true, you always have to be open to pursuing different forms of, you know, that your art can take. The other thing that I notice with a lot of my friends in the music business that are still kind of figuring it out to some extent or another is that it's always more work than you think it's going to be. It's not going to be, if you want to make it in music, it's not going to be, you know, I'm going to work on it on weekends. It's going to be a 9 to 5. And more likely than not, it's going to be more than a 9 to 5. Yeah. And you're going to be there on your laptop emailing and doing cold calls more than you're going to actually touch your instrument. And you have to do that in order to, you know, get to do what you want to do for the amount of time that you want to do it. But it can be really rewarding at the end of the day.
100%. Yeah. I love it, man. I love the entrepreneurial attitude. I think, you know, this is, you know, really kind of cool where you know, where this interview has gone. Because a lot of things I think that, you know, I've been working through recently is, you know, like realizing really how much work it takes to put in. And, you know, for a few months now, I've upped my game. I realized that working 12 hours for me and my ambitions is really not enough. And so now I'm working, you know, 16, 18-hour days.
Yeah.
Every day, you know, it's basically 7 days a week. You know, sometimes I take a 2-hour break to meet friends. Other than that, it's, you know, gigging, prepping for gigs, making calls. Exactly.
But, you know, it also depends what you consider to be work. If you like practicing, if you like gigging, maybe that part's not work, and that's the fun part.
Exactly. You know? I think that's it for me.
There's always going to be some work involved. It's not all fun and games. As much as, you know, you want it to be.
Cool. Yeah, man. That's kind of cool, like that sort of thing. And so, like, for up and coming, like, working musicians or people who really want to start something new, I think that's a really cool approach. And for people who are just coming into it and just starting to, you know, wet their feet in music, just at the beginning, do you have some sort of idea of what you might recommend them as an approach to beginning and starting something new?
Yeah, really, it's just going for it. You know, don't let yourself get, you know, distracted by the small mistakes. You know, it's only a mistake if you make a face. It's, you know, it's jazz, man.
Cool.
You're always going to get better, and there's always going to be someone better than you. And, you know, if you go for it, you can really do what you want with your art. And the more time that you put in, you know, the better you get. I definitely believe in the 10,000 hour rule. And
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And Gabriel, he recently released a new album this summer. He's definitely been putting in a lot of work. Let's show this here. Nice. Killer. So we'll put a link in the interview below. And Gabriel, do you want to talk a tiny bit about, how you were making this album?
Yeah, for sure. So this album is called Back to Back Bay, and it's kind of that fusion of Celtic music, bluegrass, and jazz. We were kind of looking for a name, so we ended up calling it Swinggrass in the end. And basically my trio has Jay Knutson, who was one of the founding members of Spirit of the West, and William Ross, who was a jazz bassist at ITCAP for a while, and part of the Vancouver jazz scene for a few years now. And we locked ourselves away in a wooden cabin and, on the Sunshine Coast for almost a week. And, it was the best kind of recording situation I've ever been in, because I've only ever tracked things in studios. And so we kind of did everything live off the floor. We hung microphones from the ceiling, and then we had our engineer up in the loft with, we brought all our gear up there. And the cabin was on the side of a lake with a hot tub, so we would do 5-6 hours of tracking, and then go sit in the hot tub for an hour and barbecue some steaks or something, and then have a few beers, and then go keep tracking. And it was just the best way to do it. I've never had that much fun recording.
Cool, man.
So and I think it really comes through. It's kind of a fun recording, and you can hear the relaxation, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And were you arranging a lot of the songs, or as a group, or a few people were certain songs, or how did the arrangements come about?
The arrangements, for the most part, they're either original tunes, or they're tunes that I, kind of took as a basis from somewhere else. The whole idea behind this project is, like I said, the word new trad, to take something old and use it as a basis for something more modern. And so there's, everything. One tune, Evening Prayer Blues, used to be a really, really old bluegrass tune from a mouth harp player, harmonica player. And, Bill Monroe retook it, and then, it kind of went through these different versions, and, this one does not really sound like the original. And so I think that there's something really cool about taking an old traditional melody and completely revamping it, reharmonizing it, putting a new arrangement to it. As far as the arrangements, I do most of them. Pen and paper, sit down for a few hours and write them down. I think that there's something really cool about approaching an arrangement from a completely intellectual kind of standpoint and doing it pen and paper, and then trying it out and seeing if it works.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, then you change it and you try something different. But for the most part, you can come up with stuff that really, when you compose with your instrument in your hand, you're very limited by the instrument, and you're only going to compose things that fall well on the instrument. Whereas when you kind of take a different approach and do it completely, you sing something in your head and then you write it down, you can have melodies that are a lot more awkward on the instrument, but that sound really cool. And of course you can edit it afterwards, and that's what practicing is for. So
cool.
To be able to play it.
Yeah, man, that's super exciting. And one sort of thing that I've been finding too is when you're creating arrangements that are sometimes sound really cool, a lot of the time they look really cool on paper. Have you been
there's a
seeing
shape.
that at all?
That's not really something I tend to write in scores. So I don't really look at them very linearly. It's funny, I started looking at it very vertically in terms of chords and that kind of thing. But there's definitely something to be said for shape when you're composing on paper, and you want to, you don't want to be jumping all over the place. You want to go up, and then you want to have a peak, and then you want to go down. And the other thing that you can kind of keep in mind is, you want to have one big peak, and nothing kind of goes above that.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of tricks with the shape that you can.
That's super cool. So bringing together a group of people and spending some time together and taking space in an environment that maybe your music lends itself to.
Exactly.
It's really cool.
Yeah, got to pick your studio space with the music too.
Exactly. So thanks so much for coming out, man.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you coming out and giving us some insight into your art, into to arranging, and to your passion for growing in such an entrepreneurial way. And that's really cool, man.
All right, well, thank you so much, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening this week, and remember to subscribe to check out more guys like Gabriel and some gals as well. And we will link up his album and see you guys soon.